I grew up in the Hudson River Valley region of New York State, and as a kid, I played in the woods a lot, and I loved it. I was very lucky that my house was surrounded by 1,000 acres of preserved land. I spent endless hours outdoors, following trails, climbing the hills, immersed in nature. As a child, I connected with nature, and it shaped me for life. As an adult, I developed a passion to share what I had found. I became ecologically minded. I taught ecology and earth science in schools. I worked with numerous environmental groups. For the past 6 years, I've worked for the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, where I've been able to continue to pursue my passion to get more and more people outdoors. My aim is to get people outside and allow them to connect with nature. My organization's mission is 100% in alignment with my own passion to improve public access to open space. I have returned to the Hudson Valley, and I now live there with my wife and my 8 children. Yes, 8. Like many fathers, I often think of my children's future. I want that future to include access to an abundance of safe, sustainable trails that lead them to beautiful, natural places. I've worked for nonprofits for almost 25 years now, and I have learned that the only way that my children will have access to an abundance of safe, sustainable trails, the only way to that future is through Trail Stewards. My Trail Steward program is one of my babies. But also, I literally actually do have 8 kids. The history of the Trail Steward program, it all starts with flip-flops. 6 years ago, back in 2013, I was a new hire at the Trail Conference, and my boss received a phone call from the regional director of New York State Parks. It was a pivotal moment. The phone rang. The director asked for an in-person meeting, and I attended that meeting as an observer, and I learned of a very challenging situation in one of the state parks. Only 50 miles from New York City, a trail with beautiful views had been discovered, and visitation had increased dramatically. Hundreds of people were getting lost, and they were getting hurt, and they were requiring rescues. The local emergency services were overtaxed. They were doing 3 to 4 rescues every single weekend. People were showing up in droves at this one particular trailhead, and they were completely unprepared for the 3 to 5 hour challenge ahead of them. Many people were attempting the hike with no water, and they wore completely inappropriate footwear. Some wore boots with no shoelaces, some wore no socks, some wore high heels, and some wore flip-flops, and some wore high-heeled flip-flops. People were also straying off of the marked trails. They were leaving the trails, and they were creating their own social trails and desire lines and shortcuts, and thus more people were getting lost. And this was greatly impacting the native plants and animals. The hikers were leaving the marked trails, and they were leaving garbage. The Parks Director asked for our help. What do you think we can do about this? The Parks Department has no additional resources. Do you think you can try to station someone at the trailhead? We tried, and we did. We responded to the park's request for help by creating a pilot program that summer, and it was an instant success. We collected the data to prove it. When our trail stewards were on duty, the need for rescues was reduced to 0, and nobody attempted the trail in flip-flops. As the allure of unplugging from technology and reconnecting with nature draws more and more people outdoors, the need to protect our natural spaces has become paramount. Since our 2013 pilot season, the Trail Conference has expanded the Trail Stewards program. We are committed to educating and assisting the public in the safe, enjoyable, and responsible use of hiking trails. This photo represents the allure of unplugging from technology and reconnecting with nature. This next slide shows the reality on one of our trails. Overuse and misuse of the nation's most popular outdoor destinations is threatening the ecological integrity of these special places. In the greater New York metropolitan region, the New York-New Jersey Trail Conference is taking a leadership role in coordinating stewardship efforts to combat growing threats. Threats to the trails, threats to the environment, threats to the well-being of the visitors, and threats to the local communities. The Trail Conference is partnered with land managers and local partners to expand the Trail Steward program to multiple trailheads and multiple summits in New York and New Jersey. We've expanded the training to outside groups as well. We now train stewards from New York State Parks Department staff and staff from New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Under this model, the Trail Conference manages the training and the partners provide oversight during the season. The funding comes from private donations and foundations and corporations, and we're working with state parks to find a way for state money to help pay for trail stewards. Last year, we trained almost 50 trail stewards in an attempt to meet the dramatic rise we're seeing in the number of hikers visiting our trails. One example of this is near my home in the Hudson Valley at Breakneck Ridge. Every Saturday and Sunday, 6 trains from Grand Central Station arrive at the dedicated Breakneck Ridge hiking trail, trailhead, train stop. The stop is in the middle of nowhere except for the trailhead. Some trains unload hundreds of hikers at once. The most hikers we ever recorded disembarking from any one single train was 525. That means over 500 people are beginning their hike all together. Because our stewards implement user surveys, we actually discovered that many of these people are experiencing one of their very first outdoor adventures. And for some of them, it's their first time hiking. And for a few, it's their absolute first time experiencing nature at all. Our stewards are in a position to shape that experience. It's understandable that many newcomers arrive at the trailhead completely unprepared for the challenging rock scramble ahead of them. Thousands of people arrive without water, without the proper footwear, and without knowledge of what lies in store for them on the trail above. The Breakneck Ridge hike is somewhat unique in our area in that it involves several sections of scrambling. Scrambling is a type of climbing on steep terrain that does not involve the use of ropes, but does require the use of your hands, and thus a backpack becomes a necessity. Without a backpack, it's very hard for hikers to carry their water bottles or their food, or to pack out their garbage. So what does a hiker do who doesn't have a backpack but wants one? Well, Trail Steward guidance extends beyond the trails. Stewards recommend things to do in nearby trail towns, thus promoting a deeper sense of community surrounding our parks. Stewards encourage visitors to go into the towns. They tell them where to eat. They tell them where to shop. A sense of community is enhanced by the fact that local outdoor retail stores help to sponsor our programs. They provide in-kind donations of high-quality uniforms and gear and footwear to every steward. The stewards attend fittings in the stores so they get to meet the staff and develop a connection with the retailer, which is often the very first place that the stewards recommend that the unprepared hiker visit. So the stewards are helping the visitors. They're also counting them. The stewards count the visitors to collect much needed user data. The data collected by the trail stewards becomes invaluable for planning purposes. We've been able to document the dramatic rise in visitorship since 2013, as well as calculate the dramatic decline in the amount of first aid and rescues required as a result of stationing stewards on site. Through data collection, we now know when the majority of lost hikers first begin their hikes. It's generally within 2 hours of sunset. But using that knowledge, we can restructure our coverage at trailheads in an attempt to intercept those potential lost hikers before they even enter onto the trails. Their on-site education then reduces the risk that they'll stay out after dark and need to be rescued. Through data collection, we now know the exact 5-degree air temperature when illegal swimming is most likely to occur. Of course, there's less swimming when it's cold out, but we also discovered that there's very little swimming if it's above 94 degrees as well. Maybe it's too hot to hike into the swimming hole. But we can reassign stewards to intercept illegal activities whenever the temperature dictates. And we have this data because stewards collected it. Before and after photos of giant ledge in the Catskills speak for themselves. After 3 years of stewards recording a rapid rise in visitorship, the fragile alpine ecosystem is actually showing obvious signs of recovery. Stewards intercepted illegal campers and they educated visitors on their impacts to the environment. Trail stewards are making a difference. Who are these trail stewards? A trail steward is an experienced hiker, an expert authority on a trail network. They are volunteers, or they are paid staff, or they are AmeriCorps members. We've been very lucky at the Trail Conference that we've been able to hire only top quality candidates. We're able to choose high energy, engaging, charismatic, outgoing, outdoorsy people, and that really makes a difference because oftentimes trail stewards only have a few seconds to make a connection with a visitor. They're stationed at trailheads, they're stationed on the tops of summits, they're stationed at key intersections along the trails, or all the above. They're in the front country and they're in the back country. In the Catskills, trail stewards use radios to communicate with each other and with DEC rangers. But cell phones do work at Breakneck Ridge and at Bear Mountain and in New Jersey, where we also run trail steward programs. Cell phones work when they are charged. And we've had several lost and injured hikers whose cell phones have died, but generally when someone needs help, they call 911 or they dial the trail steward cell phone directly. The trail stewards are issued first aid kits, and they're also issued iPhones that ring together from a common phone number. That phone number is listed on the back of free trail maps, and it's also on business cards dispersed at the trailhead. Depending on the severity of the situation, the stewards will alert park management or the police or the fire department whenever it's necessary. Some trail stewards are wilderness EMTs themselves, but at a minimum, all trail stewards are trained in wilderness first aid, which is an advanced first aid CPR certification for 3 days. In most cases, when trail stewards are notified, they actually arrive on the scene with the necessary first aid equipment before any outside rescue agencies are able to get to the lost or injured hiker. And that's simply because they're already on site. They have less distance to travel, and they know all the trails really well, and they know all the shortcuts, and they're all in really great physical shape. They run up and down the mountain all day long. I am not a trail steward. I am a manager. In most cases, when the stewards are notified first, they actually completely eliminate the need for any outside rescue agencies to get involved at all. It's because we train them to put them into a position so that they can handle most of the problems themselves. Down at the trailhead, stewards welcome visitors and they supply maps. They teach hikers how to read trail maps, and they teach hikers how to read trail markers. They recommend route options, and they recommend loop hikes. They supply water. They teach visitors how to avoid poison ivy. They teach people how to try to avoid ticks. Stewards provide an orientation to the outdoors. Stewards build excitement about being in nature, and they cultivate and recruit volunteers. They recruit volunteers to perform trail maintenance and trail building and garbage pickups. The visitors then become the very people who protect our parks, our open spaces, and our public trails. Some of these people will become lifelong volunteers with our organization. They're finding out how to volunteer because trail stewards are telling them in person how to get involved. For almost 100 years, the Trail Conference has managed the care of the trails through the work of volunteers. Last year, over 2,000 volunteers logged over 100,000 volunteer hours on our projects in New York and New Jersey. Of course, there's more garbage on the trail now than there was 100 years ago, and this will be my last example of how trail stewards in person make a difference. Sometimes, right on site, stewards will hand out garbage bags to interested hikers who then pick up trash along their hiking route and return the filled garbage bags back to a collection point at the trailhead. The trail stewards are able to provide immediate, genuine appreciation right in the moment, and that cannot be overstated. The power of the person in person is powerful. Finally, our natural resource protection model is based on the 7 Leave No Trace principles. All Trail Conference trail stewards are trained by the Leave No Trace organization as trainers. They ask hikers to plan ahead and prepare, to bring food and water, to wear a backpack, to pack out their garbage, to stay on the marked trails, to be respectful of plants and wildlife, and to be considerate of fellow visitors. Last year, the Trail Conference received an award from the Leave No Trace organization. It was an award for outstanding care and stewardship of the Breakneck Ridge Trail. I've been told countless times that trail stewards provide an invaluable service to the local communities, that they benefit the rescue agencies, that they protect the natural resource. To me, trail stewards benefit the future. I'm passionate about my children. I'm protective of my children's future. The data shows that trail steward programs work. I will work to continue the expansion of trail stewards. Thank you.